mitigate, and even treat some of these chronic diseases, and in some instances, cancer. Now, studying gene-environment interactions is going to be challenging. Not only did I mention, we're not only studying genes and we're studying disease, but now we're studying foods that relate all of these. And so this little diagram over here is a typical systems biology sort of information network that exists in the cells. To make a long story short, everything is connected to everything. Everything sort of relates to everything. And the reason that this is going to be a challenge is because all of these complexities here. First of all, there are different types of food. There's varieties of food. There's seasonal variations of food and the way that foods are selected in various times of the year. There are food fads and public response to news and studies and ads. The Atkins diet is an example of this. You're bombarded with food advertisements and food fads all the time, and you will make your dietary choices sometimes based on these. Food preparation and cooking. There's a lot of work that's being done on the consequences of overcooking meat. I had a woman from Korea one time in one of my classes. After I talked to her about the production of heterocyclic amines in barbecued meat, and that too much barbecuing, too much blackening is not good for you because it increases the high level of these heterocyclic amines. And she raised her hand. She says, you know, my grandmother in Korea always warned me not to over barbecue the meat, not to blacken it. And maybe what you're saying, maybe this makes sense. So this is an example of sort of this folklore now being supported by scientific investigation. There are cultural and religious backgrounds that come into play, socioeconomic status. There was a report here at UC Davis that said that eating well, taking advantage of all of our knowledge of diet, is expensive, unfortunately. So good nutrition comes with a price, and not everybody can afford the benefits of good nutrition. Access to health care is another issue. Your age and your health status, exercise and lifestyle, whether you're a jogger or a couch potato, genetic components, of course, that's one of the things we're very interested in, and the complexity of diseases. I wish we were studying a disease that was caused by a single microorganism causing a particular disease, then we could combat that with an antibiotic. But no, the chronic diseases that we're facing today are multigenic diseases, polygenic diseases as we call them, multifactorial diseases. That means many genes acting in small ways over a long period of time to cause that disease. Multifactorial means that not only is there an etiology, a biological basis for that disease involving many genes, but there are all these social, cultural, behavioral factors that come into play. So things like obesity, it's complicated. There are over 30 genetic markers for obesity. There are over 33 different Mendelian phenotypes for obesity. So what phenotype, obese phenotype will I have if I overeat? So there's complicated genetics, complicated environmental factors. So now that I've convinced you that the field of nutritional genomics as it relates to health disparities is complicated, I now have to reassure you that although it's a challenge, it is a problem that can be solved if you create the right team. So what I have here are all of our partners involved in the Center of Excellence for Nutritional Genomics, starting with UC Davis, which is the administrative home of that center, and our partner, the Children's Hospital of Oakland Research Institute, down on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Oakland, the Children's Hospital of Oakland, the UC Davis Health System, that's our medical center, Altabate Summit Medical Center, the home of the Ethnic Health Institute, another partner for us. And here on the Davis campus, we have the benefit of interacting with the USDA through the Western Human Nutrition Research Center. So we bring a number of expertises from genomics to cultural, social issues, to nutritional issues, to medical issues, all brought together under the umbrella that we call the NCMHD Center of Excellence for Nutritional Genomics. Now, a little bit about the center. What is the framework for our center? I thought about what I would describe that by telling you what we must do and what we have to do it with, and how long we have to do it, where we must do it, and what we can't do without. So I have this little diagram here that starts what we must do is address health disparities. And actually, in my opinion, all biomedical researchers should be addressing health disparities. If you look out at the landscape of America and you look at the rates of diseases geographically, ethnic, racially, and you see a peak of disease, wouldn't you naturally want to know why is that particular disease affecting these individuals at such a high rate? So that's health disparities, and that's what we're going to be looking at. We have a grant from the NCMHD at the NIH of $6.5 million to address this problem. We have approximately 5 years from January 2003 to June 2007 to address this problem. We are working primarily at UC Davis or the Sacramento region and at Corey in the East Bay. We have a nutritional component. We have experts, world experts in the area of nutrition. We have experts in the area of genomics, experts in the area of proteomics. We have experts sitting here in the room in the area of bioinformatics. We have an outreach component. The NIH and the NCMHD is adamant that we take the results of the research that we are doing and communicating that to the community. They need to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And hopefully, if we gain their trust, they will participate in our research. You are participating in our education component today. We have a very strong education component led by Dr. Turvalon. We have a training component. Some of you actually may participate in our training program. We have a year-round training program, a summer training program. And lastly, we have an administrative core, which is housed here at Davis, and that helps us interact with the NIH. It keeps us in compliance with all federal regulations in terms of dealing with our budget. So that's the framework of the center. I just want to summarize here again. The center recognizes that many factors contribute to health disparities in minority communities. In addition to socioeconomic and behavioral and cultural factors, the center will examine complex relationships between diet, genes, and disease. How diet and genes interact to promote health and cause disease is called nutritional genomics. The source of phenotypic variation, common genetic variation. There's a lot of talk now that the human genome has been sequenced, that we are genetically identical. We are genetic identical twins. And as some of you have heard me say, you look around the room, it's very hard to find your identical twin. We are not all exactly the same. That below the surface, you can see that difference on the surface, but you look below the surface and genetically, physiologically, biochemically, we're all slightly different. And that difference is due to common genetic variation. About 0.1% of our genome differs from one individual to the next. That represents about 3 million differences, 3 to 6 million differences in terms of base pairs. Within that 3 to 6 million base pair difference is all of the variation that we see in the room. Hair color, eye color, stature, whether you're obese, whether you're slim, whether you're going to get age-related diseases or whether you'll get cancer. All of that is encompassed in that 3 to 7 million SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. So nutritional genomics seeks to link diet and disease risk through common genetic variation in human populations. And it goes back to that example that I gave you about the Pima Indian. There is genetic variation between Pima Indian and whites that cause high rates of type 2 diabetes when exposed to an important environmental factor. That environmental factor is Western diet. It's not seen across the border where you have a more traditional diet, but only in Arizona where you have a Western diet. Now, again, to emphasize how complicated this is and how many factors come into play in terms of taking genotype, that's the genetic contribution that you were born with, and turning that into phenotype, that's what you look like on the outside, that's your physiology on the inside. There are all of these modulating and potentiating filters that the genes must go through. There are epigenetic filters, that is, genes changing genes in your body. And this actually begins in utero, that the chromatin, your chromosomes, your genetic material can start to be altered before you're even born, and that can shape how healthy you are